Oh, she's bigger than that. Yeah. Yeah, she's bigger than that. She's a 20. Pike fly fishing is becoming more and more popular here in the UK. However, I still see beginners and even some people who've been doing it for some time making some very basic mistakes. So, here are my 5 tips to help you into the sport of pike fly fishing. There she is in all her splendour. Look at that, magnificent. Tip number 1. Sounds pretty obvious, but you need the correct rod, reel and line weighting. So I would recommend a 9 or 10 weight rod with a large arbor reel that can hold the line. The line's going to be thicker, so you need a slightly larger reel than a normal fly trout fishing reel. And you need line to match the rod. So if you've got a 9 weight rod, you need 9 weight line. 10 weight rod, 10 weight line. At the end of this video, I'm going to show you a bonus tip, which is probably the biggest tip of all. So make sure you watch to the end, and I can guarantee 95% of the people watching this video won't follow this piece of advice. Tip number 2, lines. Now, lines are a really confusing minefield, particularly for beginners. There are so many lines that you can buy. There are 3 main types of fly lines. The first one being the floating line, and unsurprisingly, it floats. And it's really not a great deal of use for in pike fly fishing. Second type of line are sinking fly lines, of which there are many, and their fall rate is rated in inches per second, IPS. And the third type are sink tip fly lines, where the tip section sinks and the main body floats. Sinking fly lines are the ones mostly used in pike fly fishing, but which ones to use? Remember, they all sink at different rates. A very useful one to use is called an intermediate, and again you can use that in very shallow water. If you look at the whiteboard, you'll see I'm writing down the several different types of sinking fly line and their sink rate in inches per second and roughly the depth in feet that you can fish on different types of water. My last bit of advice for pike fly lines are buy a dedicated pike fly line. Don't scrimp on this. The reason being they are designed to be weight forward. This means a lot of the weight is in the front part section of the fly line, and this basically makes them easier to cast. Tip number 3 I call the business end. This means the flies and traces that you need to use. Companies such as Fulling Mill produce a comprehensive range of flies with really intriguing names like the Clydesdale Gold Perch, Doogie's Yellow Baitfish, the Monster Dahlberg and the Andino Deceiver. Remember that it's far easier to cast flies with less material within them, so make sure you choose small flies rather than some of these big monstrosities. You must use a wire trace for pike fly fishing. Again, Fulling Mill make a ready-made trace, and Airflow make a trace that comes supplied with a poly leader. Just one thing to consider, make sure the clips are in good working order. This is normally the weakest part of the whole system, and you don't want to lose your PB pike if a clip fails on one of these rigs. Tip number 4 is the retrieve. Now I would suggest there's 3 main types of retrieve for pike fly fishing. The first one is a stripping action, where you are imparting a sharp movement into the fly line, making the fly shoot up and then letting it drop down. That's called stripping. Second action is kind of a figure of 8 with your left hand if you're a right hander. It's a smoother type action, slightly slower. And the third type of action is where you put the rod under your armpit and you roly-poly with your hands and get very fast action into the fly. And that is a very good early season technique to use. It gets a reaction, particularly from jack pike, and you can catch a lot of jacks by getting them to react with the fly flashing past them. Tip number 5, playing a pike. So now you've hooked a pike and hopefully you are keeping tension on the fish. If you're a right hander, rod in your right hand, fly line in your left hand, and you trap the fly line between your first and second finger and the blank. Do not attempt to reel up the slack fly line onto your reel. You'll just end up getting a slack line with the fish and losing it. The reel is primarily there just to hold the fly line and the backing. It's very rare that you'll get a pike actually take enough fly line to get onto your backing to play it off the reel. So forget using the reel as you would a conventional reel when fishing on fishing other methods. Keep that rod nicely bent over and just play the fish like you would do conventionally. When it wants to go, let line slip through your finger. The line will be wet, so it's very easy to do this, but just keep constant tension on the fish and you'll get the fish in the net without any bother at all. And don't be scared to put a lot of pressure on the pike. Fly rods bend, they bend a long way. You won't snap off. So just keep the pressure on the fish. Don't overdo it obviously, but you can play pike very hard on a fly rod and you can get them in pretty quickly. This is the bonus tip, and this is the best piece of advice I can give anybody wishing to take up pike fishing on the fly, or in fact any type of fly fishing for predators. That is, learn to trout fish. There are so many easy starter kits that you can get from tackle shops all around the country. I'm here at Hanningfield Reservoir today using their tackle shop, so thanks guys for that. But if you spend a year learning to cast a trout setup, lighter lines, lighter rods, 7 weight, 8 weight, learning to get turnover, which again is far more advanced for this video, but learning to cast properly, you will get the utmost enjoyment out of your pike fly fishing because you can transfer the skill. So that is my bonus tip. Learn to trout fish, spend the first year learning to cast. Catching trout on the fly is relatively easy. You'll get lots of interest, lots of fish. It will keep your enthusiasm going during those tough times of learning the cast, and then you can then take that to the next level when you pike fly fish. You need to remember that casting heavier lines is really taxing, and you need to have a good technique and need to double haul to get a line out consistently throughout the day. And then you'll really enjoy the fishing and you'll learn more and your skill level will improve, and then you'll get more and more into the sport. So that's it guys, best tip ever, learn to trout fish first.